Today, when patients come to the hospital for an elective operation, the anesthetic is presumed to proceed and end without incident or accident. Thus, when a serious complication occurs, such as the cardiac arrest and death on the table of a seemingly healthy patient, many anesthesiologists may be unfamiliar with how to proceed. I'm Dr. Jan Davis, and the goal of this video is to describe what should be done after an anesthetic catastrophe. 3 major areas are covered: debriefing the anesthesiologist and the operating team, contacting the family, and investigating the complication. Now, this video is presented in the form of a play with a fictional setting, fictional characters, and a fictional event. But the problem is real. The steps described to deal with the problem are only our recommendations, and not all of them will be appropriate for every situation. However, we believe that they provide an outline of what to do when things go wrong, and we hope that presentation in this format will encourage discussion and preparation for the unexpected.
We go now to any town, about 30 miles from the closest city. The hospital has about 150 surgical beds and serves a close-knit community. A locum anesthesiologist from the nearby city has offered to relieve a colleague who wants to go to an anesthesiology meeting. It is now Monday morning. The operating schedule is general surgery. The first 2 patients have undergone routine and uneventful operations and are recovering from anesthesia and surgery. The third patient is a 35-year-old mother of 2 young children who is an operating room nurse. She's well known to other OR staff, but not, of course, to Dr. Locum. She is scheduled to have a laparoscopic cholecystectomy under general anesthesia and is admitted to the hospital on the day of the procedure. She is well and quite healthy, although nervous about the procedure and also a little embarrassed about being a patient in her own hospital. 3 weeks ago, she had a common cold, but has recovered. Her heart and lungs are clear to auscultation. Her hemoglobin concentration is normal. She is classified as ASA physical status 1, and no difficulty is anticipated with tracheal intubation. Her previous anesthesia history includes 2 general anesthesias, one at age 7 for tonsillectomy and the other at age 21 for an appendectomy. On both occasions, she suffered from prolonged postoperative vomiting. General anesthesia is induced and tracheal intubation accomplished. The circulating nurse starts to prep the abdomen while the surgeon gowns. During this period, the patient becomes progressively hypotensive and hypoxic over 5 to 10 minutes. She then suffers a cardiac arrest.
Okay, I'm going to call a code.
Okay, yeah, saturate.
What happened? She's pulses. Do you want to start CPR? I need another line. Tell me the story. What's wrong with her? What is she?
Operative laparoscopy.
A lap? And I have no previous cardiac history. Okay, what's her rhythm? She's in VTAC. Pulseless? Yeah. What's she still in? How old is she? She's young.
35.
Okay, stop. Gotta defibrillate one more time.
We're going to crack the chest?
Any output?
No.
Repeat the epi, 3 milligrams. So how many minutes have we been doing this now? She's been down 33 minutes.
Full resuscitation is carried out, but without success. An hour later, efforts to revive her are reluctantly abandoned, and she is pronounced dead.
How long has it been now?
About 58 minutes.
58. Oh, we've done this almost an hour. We're going to call it. We've done everything. Thanks. You guys, you did a good job.
As Act 2 opens, we find the distraught Dr. Locum joined by the department head, who has come in late as he is the on-call anesthesiologist for that day.
Hi, welcome to town. Well, what's the matter? Is there a problem?
Yes, something dreadful has just happened. A patient of mine has just died on the table.
What happened?
I've no idea. I got her off to sleep. The surgeon was getting ready to start. Then her pressure started to drop. She continued to desaturate, and then she arrested.
Which one was it? Not Sonia.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Well, I'd better get on with the rest of the cases.
Not right away. We need some time sorting things out. There are several things that have to be done right away. If this were a larger department, I could bring someone else in to do the administrative tasks, and you and I could have a nice, quiet chat about what happened.
Yes, you're right. Just thinking about it has made me forget all those necessary details.
Don't worry. We're all brought up in the tradition that the show must go on. We all react that way. Now, look, we need to contact the husband. Where's the surgeon?
Dictating, I think.
So he hasn't spoken with the family?
I don't think so. He did send a message out with one of the nurses that things weren't going well, but he's as shattered as I am, and he headed straight for the dictation booth.
Good. Look, that at least gives us some time to organize the meeting with the family and the operating team. And for you to complete your documentation once you think you're ready.
Thank you.
While this situation is terribly difficult, some procedural considerations must be observed. Contacting the family members is of paramount importance and must be handled properly. Remember, if family members are already in the hospital, then the information must not be given out in the hallway. And if by phone, then the call should be made privately, and major details shouldn't be given out right away. You might say, please come to the hospital. Yes, I'm afraid it's bad news. I'll talk to you when you arrive. Second, the OR where the catastrophe occurred should be closed. You should ensure that nothing is thrown out, like the drugs, and that none of the monitors are turned off until all equipment and supplies involved in the patient's care have been examined carefully. It's important to make sure that if there is an unrecognized problem in the room, that it is found in order to prevent subsequent patients from being injured. Third, it is important to inform the appropriate administrative parties, the head of the department and the coroner or medical examiner, as well as the family doctor who will be looking after the relatives. The hospital or local risk manager should be contacted. The risk manager may suggest obtaining legal counsel and direction at this point. Fourth, the anesthesiologist OR cases for the rest of the day must be checked to see if there's anything urgent that must be done. Otherwise, it may be better for the other patients to be put off.
I really think it would be best if you canceled the rest of your cases today.
But the schedule.
I know that it's an inconvenience, but patient safety must come first.
It's probably also better for everyone, the patients, the nurses, surgeon, and anesthesiologist, if the team stops work for some time. This isn't just for the physical aspects of the equipment and drugs which need to be checked, but also because of the emotional strain. Fifth, someone must review everything. It's preferable to get an individual who wasn't involved in the case, and sometimes it's preferable to get someone independent of the department. You need an investigator who will be methodical and unbiased. This could be another anesthesiologist or internist, or even a surgeon, depending on the circumstances of the case. You might even want to have more than one individual.
Why don't I find you a nice, quiet corner where you won't be disturbed? Where you can write your notes. After that, we can discuss what happened. What about a cup of coffee?
Thanks.
I understand. It's such a shock. You're probably not even sure where to start, are you?
That poor woman.
Why don't I outline what you need to do, and then I'll leave you for a while.
Dr. Crown 1266. Dr. Crown 1266.
Now, as this will be a coroner's case, you'll want to make sure that your anesthesia record is complete, with an annotation as to the time of completion. I'll get you a different pen with a different color ink, so you can note that the case was abandoned. You need to make sure that all the data are complete. Once you've finished with the anesthesia record, you should number every page and label with the words original document, date, time, and sign this. Then, you should write an account of what happened, the facts of the case. This serves two purposes. It fills out the details of the anesthesia record, which are often difficult for non-anesthesiologists to understand. And it will serve as an aid to your memory of the events of the case. This should be a detailed, step-by-step account. It should contain as much information as to timing of events and actions as you can remember, while they're still fresh in your mind. It's extremely important that you avoid speculation and interpretation of causes, especially if you're uncertain or if definite data are not available to you. When in doubt about what happened, just adhere to a strict description of what you did and what you saw. Remember the old line from television, just the facts, ma'am. Then, you should number, label, date, time, and sign these pages, as you did with the anesthesia record. Finally, you should make 2 copies of all these sheets, whatever parts of the hospital records that are pertinent. That probably means the whole thing. The original sheets should be appended to the record.
One of the copies should be kept in the departmental quality assurance files, and the other should be kept for possible future reference. Once the paperwork is completed, Dr. Friend will talk with his colleague behind that closed door. The debriefing should take place in a format that preserves confidentiality and medical legal privilege for the physicians. The local risk manager or legal counsel can provide the necessary format or directions for this activity. This discussion is qualified under hospital procedures as part of the quality assurance process. What is said should remain confidential with 2 general exceptions. The first is that Dr. Locum's spouse should be made aware of the tragic events of the day. The second is that if Dr. Friend judges that Dr. Locum is so depressed that he may come to some harm himself, then a responsible physician should be informed. Dr. Friend will start by obtaining a factual account of the events, using such words as,
What did you do then?
once the preliminary account is given, Dr. Friend can elicit emotional information. For example, he might say,
How did you feel when that happened?
it must be remembered that the anesthesiologist is not the only member of the team to need support. Very often others are forgotten, in particular the nurses. Thus, the entire team should assemble as soon as possible after the event. Ideally, this would occur no later than the change of shift for the nursing staff. In the room where they meet, all should be comfortably seated, perhaps around a large table so that everyone may see each other. Whoever leads the debriefing should inform those participating that pursuant to state law, proceedings of a quality assurance or mortality committee are confidential. This will facilitate obtaining full disclosure of the facts and to gain a better understanding of what took place. Those attending should appreciate that the purposes of the meeting are to provide an understanding of what happened and to allow venting of feelings. Thus, facts should be recounted, emotions volunteered. All should understand the importance of recognizing and dealing with the stress of the original event, as well as that from the debriefing, and everyone should have a chance to say something. An hour has passed. The surgeon, Dr. Locum, Dr. Friend, and the senior nurse from the OR are about to meet with the patient's husband and convey the unfortunate news of his wife's death. Before the meeting, Dr. Friend outlined what he would do. He suggested that he would break the news and give the facts. He advised his colleagues that sometimes it's necessary to stop for a while to allow the family to ventilate their grief. He requested that Dr. Locum and Dr. Surgeon then restate the facts, answer any questions, and outline the legally necessary steps. He explained that he would then conclude the meeting by expressing continuing support and sympathy. The meeting was held in a small private office furnished with a few chairs, a table, and a telephone. The husband had declined a chaplain but had brought a neighbor. Dr. Friend, as the hospital representative, coordinated the meeting. First, Dr. Friend confirmed the identity of the husband and neighbor and introduced himself and the operating room team members. He then conveyed the bad news by stating,
I'm afraid that I have some very distressing news for you. Before the operation, your wife's heart stopped. Despite all we could do and all our efforts, I'm afraid your wife has died.
Oh, Dave, how can that be?
He hoped that he would be able to convey the team members' emotions of empathy, great effort, and tragedy. He also recognized that in giving such news, the reaction of the relatives would in part depend on their cultural background.
You said it was just...
Then Dr. Friend
don't understand.
outlined what had happened. He also established what had been the husband's understanding of the procedure.
Dave.
I'd like to talk you through what happened.
He was careful not to make any assumptions.
Perhaps you could tell me what you know about why your wife was having the operation.
He then described briefly the facts, without offering any opinion, remembering the great importance of giving only factual information rather than having to face a later situation of retracting theories based on speculation.
We are not exactly sure why your wife died.
The team then left the husband with the neighbor. The team returned 20 minutes later. Formal introductions were again made. The facts were reiterated by both Dr. Locum and the surgeon. A pause was made for questions. The necessary legal information about the coroner and calling the undertaker was provided. The husband was then given an opportunity to view the body after having been told of the necessity of not removing any of the medical devices because of the coroner's investigations. Finally, ongoing support was offered. The husband went home to his children, but Dr. Friend promised to call him as soon as Dr. Investigator had finished the preliminary stage of going over the operating room.
Well, Dr. Investigator, you finished checking the room?
Yes, I've checked the piped gas supplies, the anesthetic equipment, and the drugs. Normally, I would also check the surgical equipment, but because the operation hadn't taken place yet, I didn't examine any of it. First, I checked with the engineering department that no one had been working on or near the pipelines, either today or in the recent past. Then I calibrated the oxygen analyzer from a fresh tank of oxygen and checked the gas from the wall. Second, I did a thorough check of the anesthesia machine. Third, I gathered all the empty vials and ampules and matched them with the syringes of drugs. Fortunately, Dr. Locum labeled everything, but everyone knows that it's very easy to pick up either the wrong ampule or wrong syringe, especially if you're in a hurry. For example, there is a reported case where epinephrine was given instead of glycopyrrolate. Both vials had tiny black type on the clear glass.
What do you do with the syringes of the drugs themselves?
We lock them in a refrigerator. Whether or not we need to analyze the contents would then depend on what the postmortem toxicology shows.
Why is that?
For example, it's pretty routine for blood concentrations of lidocaine and opioids, such as morphine, to be measured in cases of sudden and unexpected death. But if the coroner finds unusual values, then the contents of the syringes could be analyzed.
So, Dr. Locum would be blamed for the death if he gave the wrong drug or the wrong amount?
We're not looking for evidence to blame anyone or that someone did something wrong. What we're trying to do is sort out all the factors which contributed to the death of the patient.
You mean the causes?
Well, cause implies blame the same way that error does, so we really shouldn't use either of these terms. What we want to do is identify the facts of what happened and isolate the factors which contributed to the death. It's inappropriate for me or anyone else at this time to impose blame or responsibility. Look, let's say that drug A was given instead of drug B. That's a fact. But more important is why drug A was injected. Take the epinephrine and glycopyrrolate example. Right now, there are no standards which require pharmaceutical companies to label different drugs differently. There is a voluntary standard for labels applied to syringes. Why not have the same ones for drug ampules? If a label is misleading or difficult to read, then that's a contributory factor. And if Dr. Locum needs bifocals or is colorblind, then that's another contributory factor.
Well, how do you figure out what all the contributory factors are?
Well, what I need to do first is to list everything that's happened in its chronological order.
Why don't we go to this office here and then you can tell me all about it?
Okay, this is called a timeline, and what it shows is each event or important finding, its timing, as well as the source of that information. For example, the cardiac arrest record. And then I determine all the possible contributory factors. I'll assign as many of the key events or findings as belonging to the patient, the anesthesia, or the surgical procedure, although in this case there was no operation. These three headings constitute the active contributory factors, that is, from the actions of individuals. But there are also latent contributory factors, which are built into the anesthesia and healthcare system. So that means carefully reviewing all the events to see if I can identify any of these as contributing to the cardiac arrest and death. But you've got to remember that these active and latent factors don't exist in isolation. They tend to have additive effects, and it's this synergism that can lead to problems. Look, it's like playing golf. Sometimes you don't hit the ball well. Perhaps it's you, your training, or experience. Perhaps it's a defect in that new club you bought, or maybe the wind caught your ball. Each of these are active factors, and they might occur alone or in various combinations. The sand traps and the hazards are the latent factors. They're designed into the system. If you've played the course before, then you might have learned how to play around them. And if it's a new course for you, they're a surprise. But what will also get you into trouble are the hidden flaws, the gopher holes or divots left by other players.
That's a very helpful analogy. Now I really understand these concepts. You might play perfectly or you might not, but either way, you still have to remember to avoid the hazards. You're helped by system defenses like the maps of the course, your own abilities, your fellow players. But if you do land in the bunker, and you could, you need a good plan to get out. So what's the plan for after you've identified the active and latent factors?
Well, the last thing to do is to formulate and implement recommendations to ensure that the same problem never happens again. From a quality assurance point of view, this could mean changes in structure, that is, in personnel or equipment, in process, how procedures are carried out, or even in outcome, how the results of cases are audited.
And of course, later on, one has to recheck what has been changed. That's assuming you can find out what went wrong and why.
Exactly. We can often get the what, but it's very difficult to get the why. One way of seeing this is to say that the active contributory factors represent the what, and the latent contributory factors represent the why. Now, it's these latter factors which are often the most important because they're part of the system. And not only are they very difficult to identify, but to eradicate. And in some cases, we cannot find definite answers. Sometimes an investigation is stopped after the determination of who did what or when, rather than carrying the process on to see what else could have affected the outcome. We have to ensure that the investigation is carried on. Even the term human error only gives us the what and never the why.
Would an autopsy be of any use?
Well, sometimes it can point out sudden causes of death which might not have been appreciated before. For example, emboli, IHSS, MI, or even CVA. But at other times, unlike surgical complications, an autopsy is not helpful in determining anesthesia-related factors. The longer the start of an investigation is delayed, the harder it is to assess the situation. Now, some delay is inevitable once the information gathering process has begun, but an investigation has to be carried out methodically. No shortcuts for the sake of speed. Even in this particular case, you may not get an answer for several weeks until all the final reports are available. Despite the best of investigative efforts, we may never know.
However, the husband will need someone from the hospital, perhaps the risk manager, contacting him and letting him know what's happening. He may even need professional psychological counseling.
As perhaps will Dr. Locum. He may need your continued help, depending on what is decided about this anesthetic catastrophe.
What you have just seen is a fable, a fictional story about an anesthesiologist and his patient, a helpful colleague and a careful investigator. What is not important to the details of what happened, whether the anesthesiologist had just finished his residency or was a seasoned veteran, or even why the patient died. What is important is that this film helps you, the viewer, think about what you and your colleagues would do when faced with an anesthetic catastrophe.